When an artist lost his girlfriend to a drunk driver, they picked up their pen and expressed their grief and rage in the form of a superhero named the Crow, a being who is resurrected by a supernatural crow and is given powers and strength to exact his vengeance. For his origins, you can check out the link in the description, because in this video,
we will explore everything there is to know about a crow's anatomy. Oh, and this is a spoiler-free video for the recently released Crow movie.
Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. So thank you. Let's begin. Who is Eric Draven? How does he become the Crow? Eric Draven was a very special kind of character. You see, this guy was conceived of by James O'Barr after the tragic loss of his fiancée, who was killed by a drunk driver. O'Barr was devastated after the loss, and as a means to vent his grief and anger, he created the Crow. The character became the embodiment of the strong ocean of emotions that O'Barr experienced, and that's why one can actually feel the darkness that blankets the Crow. In the graphic novel, Draven also loses his girl Shelley. In fact, he had to face much worse than what O'Barr did in real life. The poor couple was taken by a gang of thugs, and Eric was forced to watch while they brutally raped and murdered Shelley. In fact, they even killed Draven. However, he's later resurrected from the dead, after which he swears revenge on the men who devastated his life beyond repair. That's when Eric Draven decides to methodically stalk and put them to death one by one. And in this path of vengeance and justice, Eric is helped and guided by the Crow. However, in the live-action movie, his origin is a bit different. Here, he was in a band called The Hangman's Joke, in which he served as the heavy metal guitarist. Shelley was his fiancée in this iteration, and the two of them were supposed to tie the knot on Halloween night. A peculiar choice, I would say. Nevertheless, Eric and Shelley are murdered the night before their wedding by T-Bird, who led a gang called the Devil's Night. Once again, Eric gets resurrected by the Crow, but this happens a year after his death. Naturally, he walks on the same path of vengeance and justice as his comic book counterpart. Can he live without eating and sleeping? I'm not sure how many of you know this, but crows are nearly invincible and invulnerable. Eric Draven, as the Crow, was an undead man, and that's why he didn't really concern himself with petty things like the need to eat or sleep. Additionally, being undead, the Crow does not feel an iota of pain, and his healing factor can put Wolverines to shame. The Crow can essentially recover from any damage almost immediately, irrespective of the magnitude of injury he's suffered. Also, a crow's bones and skin are relatively more durable than a normal human's. However, there's still one pain the Crow is not impervious to, that of the tortured memories of losing their loved ones way before time, and the mental hurt caused by their own untimely death. Nevertheless, apart from this, the Crow does not contract any disease or decay, in spite of the fact that he's basically dead. In the City of Angels, a crow named Ash Corvin dismantled a block of concrete by banging his head against it during a fight with Kali, and of course, he suffered no injury. In fact, even his makeup was intact. Can he talk to crows? If you're an undead superhero that's based on a bird and you can't communicate with that bird, you're a pretty shit superhero. Just saying. So yeah, the Crow can in fact communicate with crows telepathically, and it's been suggested on a few occasions that he can telepathically communicate with cats as well. Can he transform into a real crow? Yep, he sure can. So in the crow form, Eric Draven and other crows can transform into crows. Not only do they get the ability to fly when in this form, but they also receive the natural abilities of crows like night vision. He can increase his strength by thinking about his loved one. If you've watched the Crow films or read the graphic novel, you'd know that crows are known for their otherworldly strength, which is pretty badass to say the least. Naturally, fighting their enemies is not much of a big deal, and only a few adversaries manage to give crows a hard time. Knocking a person unconscious and breaking concrete with single blows comes easy to them. But not just real-world enemies. Crows stand their ground, even against supernatural villains. So what's the real source of a crow's powers? Well, these supes draw all their strength from love. Yep, and naturally, when a crow feels love in their undead heart, or when they reminisce about their loved ones, or ones who love them, the crow's power drastically increases. How does his telepathy work? Do you know exactly how Eric Draven took his revenge from Top Dollar in the first movie? Well, he practically killed Top Dollar by making him feel the 30 hours of pain that Shelley had felt. But Top Dollar was made to feel this pain in a single moment. And of course, the man could not survive beyond that moment. Although it sounds like one heck of a death, I think Top Dollar was let off easy. But that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is that telepathy works in various ways for the crows. And one of these is tactile telepathy and empathy. So every crow has this ability to actually see snippets of memories belonging to his lover. When a crow touches the things that his loved one once touched, the former can see the latter's memories. Additionally, they can even see memories by touching the eyes of someone. If you thought that was awesome, hear this. Once the crow gets possession of these memories, the crow can practically transfer these memories, images, and even feelings like pain and pleasure onto the person whose eyes the crow touches next. That's how Top Dollar was killed. Why do crows wear face paint? In the Crow films, except The Crow Salvation, the lead characters wear unique makeup. Eric Draven from the first film gets his look from a masquerade mask, featuring white face paint, black lines around the eyes, black lips, and a Glasgow smile-like horizontal line. In The Crow City of Angels, Ash's makeup given by Sarah is similar. Jimmy, in The Crow Wicked Prayer, also follows this style, but without the mouth line and finer eye lines. The Crow Salvation differs. Alex Corvitz's face gets marked by scars and burns from an electric chair execution, which resembles the makeup with additional vertical lines over the eyes. In the comics, the origin of Eric's makeup isn't explained. Some characters like Joshua, Iris Shaw, and Mark Leung don't wear any, while Ash's makeup is from Sarah. Michael Corby's appears more like a tattoo, extending to his neck and shoulders, described as the mask of death and the trails of Gorgon's blood. The TV series Stairway to Heaven shows Eric's transformation into the crow, automatically applying the makeup and changing his fingernails to black. This look vanishes when he returns to normal.
I'd like you to meet two buddies of mine.
Does he have X-ray vision? Now, we know that crows are high on powers and abilities. I don't want to say that they're entirely nighttime heroes like Batman, but a good chunk of their actions take place after the sun goes down. Naturally, they need a bit of night vision, etc. Now, a crow's supernatural senses enable them to eliminate the target after a precise hunt. Additionally, all crows share their senses with the crow itself, allowing them to see clearly across long distances and in complete darkness. So X-ray vision? Not so much. But night vision? Sure.
Are there any female crows? The Crow, Flesh and Blood from 1996 by James Vance and Malieve introduces the first female crow, Iris Shaw. Iris served in the Bureau of Land Management as an upright officer. In this capacity, she happened to chance upon a few local farmers who'd been illegally and mercilessly poisoning the coyotes in their area. Naturally, Iris questioned them and went, "What the hell, man? Don't you fear the wrath of law?" But the coyote killers didn't give two shits to her warnings. Instead, they threatened to kill her. It turned out that these farmers belonged to an extremely radical militant group and was extremely anti-government. They planted a bomb in the two-story building out of which the Bureau of Land Management worked. This bombing killed a local woman, the marshal, and Iris, including her unborn child. But as you may well know by now, people who are deemed to become crows are brought back to life by crows. And the same happened with Iris. She came back as the superhero crow, and was informed by the crow who brought her back to life that her only mission was now vengeance. Needless to say, Iris gladly accepted the offer. She starts questioning the locals on the bombing that killed her and her unborn child, and it wasn't long before she found information about the cabal of militant farmers. As a crow, she knew no remorse towards subjecting her enemies to the harshest of punishments, and in this regard, she started with burying alive the first pair of killers she found. And as far as the other 5 were concerned, she ensured that they received the justice they deserved, a form of justice that fit the nature of their crimes. In the end, she finds out who the mastermind of the whole bombing was, and brings him to his knees, making him learn what it meant to suffer, what it really meant. Are they immortal? Well, crows are essentially undead creatures, so yeah, it's safe to say that they're essentially immortal. But can they be killed, or rather destroyed, since they're already dead? The crow seems tethered to the mortal world by their unfinished business, usually revenge. Once vengeance is complete, their purpose might be fulfilled, and their existence could cease. It's been mentioned time and again that crows are essentially given missions after their resurrection, and these missions are almost always related to avenging their deaths and that of their loved ones. So it would make sense for the crows to cease their existence after this this mission has been fulfilled, but we don't know for sure. The comics and films primarily focus on the Crow's quest for revenge. There's little information on what happens after they achieve their goals. Additionally, they have a certain supernatural connection, so it's possible that they come back as and when required, that is, assuming that they fade into nothingness in the first place. You see, the Crows themselves play a key role in the resurrection process. Perhaps the connection to these mythical birds grants the Crow a prolonged lifespan, or a unique state of being, but not true immortality. Overall, the Crow's immortality in the franchise leans more toward a state of extended life or undeath, fueled by their purpose. They're not invincible and can be killed, but their connection to the Crows and the unfinished business that brought them back keeps them tethered to a non-mortal existence. Having said that, I can't help but wonder what happens to them after they've achieved their vengeance. Perhaps you have some input, but I do know about at least one instance where the Crow went, well, home after her vengeance was achieved. I would talk more about this in the section where I talk about if children can become crows. Actually, let's talk about it now. Can a child become a crow? Well, the short answer is yes, but there's more to it than that. So, in the Crow comic titled Curare, we meet Joe Salk, a retired Detroit police officer, whose wife has left him because of how involved he was in his work. One of the characters even notes in the comic how divorce and detectives go hand in hand. Nevertheless, now Joe lives alone in his house like an outsider in his own life. He worked on many cases throughout his lifetime, but he can't shake off this one case that changed his life and turned him into a recluse of sorts. So one rainy night, he gets a call about a young Jane Doe. Preliminary investigation tells Joe that this poor girl has been subjected to gruesome pain. She's been defiled and murdered. Joe does his detective thing and soon sends the body for postmortem, where the doctor reveals more information to Joe about how she was hurt beyond imagination. So much so that her internal organs have been damaged. She was definitely raped, but the damage to her genitals was so intense that the doctor failed to understand if she had been sodomized as well. To make it worse, it was revealed that she was alive when all of this was happening. Joe becomes obsessed with the case. It also takes a toll on his personal life. You see, he himself had a couple of daughters, and probably saw them in the girl he found, raped and murdered. So it was obvious that he wanted to find the killer and ensure that no other girl had to suffer the fate that this one experienced. Days pass, and he gets no clues. Nothing but the name Carrie. But he didn't know if this was the Jane Doe's first name or last. It wasn't long though before Carrie, now calling herself Curare, appeared before Joe. Of course, she'd been resurrected by a crow and had become one herself. She guides Joe in every way she can to find her murderer. During this time, the two of them become close. Joe learns that this little girl is like a ghost, but he still treats her like a little girl. I might go as far as to say that he treated her like one of his own daughters. Nevertheless, after some struggle, they reach the house of the culprit, where Joe murders him, thereby avenging Curare. So yeah, children can become crows, although such instances are rare. Now, remember I mentioned that there's at least one instance where a crow went home. Well, this is the one. So after everything was done, and Curare had thanked Joe on behalf of herself and all the other girls that the child killer had killed, the mystical crow present with Curare tells her that it's time for them to go home. She starts walking after bidding Joe goodbye and soon disappears. I'm assuming that since her job was done and vengeance served, she went to heaven. Do crows have regenerative abilities? It does seem like crows have a certain degree of healing powers. They can be injured during fights, but they recover from the most fatal injuries in a very short amount of time. In the recently released Crow movie, it's suggested that the crow feels pain, but the healing powers still work just fine. Given that the crow is immortal to a certain extent, the regenerative ability or healing power is an essential that helps him remain on his feet to take down the enemy.
What sort of weaknesses do crows have? The reborn in the Crow series are nearly invincible, thanks to a magical crow that links them to life. If the crow gets hurt or dies, they become vulnerable. This weakness was shown and targeted in The Crow and the Crow City of Angels, where their powers were reduced to nothing. By powers, I mean seeing memories by touching eyes. Their invulnerability fades once they believe their mission is done. In The Crow Salvation, Alex Corvus becomes vulnerable after being deceived about completing his mission, but regains strength with help. In the original graphic novel, Eric remains invincible, except to self-harm. The Crow Walking Nightmares reveals leaving Vengeance path strips the reborn of their powers, leading to decay and rigor mortis, as if dead again.
What other reason can make crows lose their powers? While it's not explicitly mentioned, the crows are largely driven by purpose. In simple words, there's a fire that drives them and pushes them to do the unthinkable, and in this regard, they're able to retain their superpowers and make good use of them. However, as we've discussed in the previous segment, a crow becomes vulnerable when they think that their purpose has been served. Also, in The Crow 2024, we see the protagonist Eric lose his superpowers when he starts doubting the love of his life. He had become a crow because his loved one was killed in front of his eyes, and he sought vengeance. There's a brief moment where he's led to thinking that his partner was also involved with the criminal underground, and this took away his powers. When he was hit by a bullet in this situation, he lay there bleeding and dying until he could strike another deal for his soul to regain his powers.
So yeah, that was all about the Crow, a fierce superhero with a penchant for vengeance. Oh, and by the way, if you've reached this point of the video, I'm sure you'd be interested in checking out our origin video on the Crow. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!